Welcome. Take a slow, deep breath and let your body relax. Tonight, we will step gently into the world of the ancient Maya, a civilization that flourished in the jungles of Central America for centuries. The Maya are remembered for their towering temples, intricate glyphs, and a calendar system that continues to inspire awe and speculation. Yet behind the grandeur of stone pyramids and cosmic calculations was the ordinary rhythm of daily life, the life of farmers, artisans, and families who worked under the humid sun, who cooked simple meals, who prayed, who carried out rituals, and who endured both hardship and wonder. In this journey, we will move slowly, one chapter at a time, through 10 different aspects of Maya life. You may find yourself drifting between listening and dreaming, and that is perfectly fine. These stories are meant to hold you gently, like the steady rhythm of footsteps on a jungle path. Let us begin by imagining what it would have been like to live not as a ruler or a priest, but as an ordinary Maya commoner. Imagine yourself waking at first light in a Maya city, perhaps in the great lowlands, where the jungle presses in from all sides. The air is already warm, thick with the scent of damp earth and smoke from hearth fires that never truly fade. Birds cry overhead, and in the distance, the rhythmic tapping of stone tools echoes from a workshop. You rise from a hammock, woven tightly from plant fibers. Your body is stiff, not from the softness of the bed, but from the demands of yesterday's work. Outside, the day begins without ceremony. Women prepare the morning meal of maize gruel, grinding the kernels on heavy stone slabs. The sound is steady and familiar, a rhythm passed down for generations. Your tasks are unchanging, yet essential. If you are a farmer, you walk to the Milpatha maize fields carved from the jungle. The sun grows hot quickly, pressing against your skin. The soil is hard, and planting requires patience and persistence. If you are young, you may carry baskets of wood or water. If you are older, your hands are calloused from years of work, your back bent slightly from the weight of burdens carried daily. The clothing you wear is simple, a woven cloth wrapped around your waist, perhaps dyed with natural pigments if your family can afford it. Bare feet press against the ground, feeling the warmth of earth and stone. Sweat is constant, but it is simply part of existence. The rhythm of life here is slow but demanding. You eat when food is ready, often maize, beans, or squash. You drink water flavored with cacao when it is available. Though for most people, cacao is a rare luxury. Ritual obligations punctuate your work. Small offerings of incense or food are made to the gods for every harvest, every meal, and every turn of the seasons is bound to forces beyond your control. Disease, too, is a constant presence. A cough lingers, a fever comes and goes. There is little in the way of medicine beyond herbs and prayers. Life expectancy is short. You know, though perhaps you do not say it aloud, that death is never far away. Still, there is community. You are not alone. Families live close together, homes clustered around small courtyards. Children laugh, play ball games with rubber spheres, and mimic the work of their parents. The voices of neighbors carry across the open spaces, and fires burn steadily in hearths that provide warmth, light, and food. And yet, for all the bonds of community, survival is not easy. Your life is bound by duty to the land, to your family, and to the gods. You work not for luxury, but for the bare rhythm of existence. This is the life of a commoner in a Maya city, simple, repetitive, and demanding. It is a life measured by the rising and setting of the sun, by the cycle of planting and harvest, and by the ever-present sense that the gods must be honored, or life itself may wither. Picture yourself walking along a narrow earthen path that winds between clusters of simple houses. The jungle presses close, green and heavy, its leaves glistening with moisture. Birds call from above, their cries sharp against the still, damp air. As you approach, the outlines of homes come into focus low, rounded shapes with thatched roofs, their walls made of mud and reeds. These are not grand palaces, but the quiet foundations of Maya life. The walls are constructed with patience. Wooden posts are driven into the ground, bound together with woven reeds, then coated with layers of clay. When you press your hand against the wall, it is cool to the touch and faintly rough. The roof above is thick with palm leaves, layered carefully to guide away the heavy rains that fall so often in this land. From a distance, the houses might appear fragile, but they are resilient, surviving season after season of sun and storm. Step inside, and the world shifts. The brightness of the jungle gives way to a dim, smoky interior. Light filters only through small gaps in the walls or the open doorway. The air is warmer here, scented with wood smoke and maize. Shadows stretch across the packed earth floor, where every mark tells a story of footsteps and daily routine. In one corner sits the hearth. It is simple, nothing more than 3 carefully placed stones forming a cradle for clay pots. Yet this modest space is the center of family life. Flames flicker low, their glow casting a soft orange light. A woman kneels there, grinding maize on a heavy stone slab called a matort. Her movements are slow, steady, unhurried. The sound of stone against stone is rhythmic, almost hypnotic, a sound that repeats every morning and every evening, the heartbeat of Maya life. Near the hearth, clay vessels line the floor. Some hold water, cool and slightly sweet from being stored in porous pottery. Others are filled with dried beans, squash seeds, or ground maize. Woven baskets, tightly bound with plant fibers, rest against the wall, ready to carry goods to the market or to the fields. Look upward, and you will see hammocks hanging from the beams. Twisted cords, strong yet flexible, cradle the woven fabric. At night, the entire family sleeps here together, swaying gently in the dark. Parents, children, even infants, all rest in close proximity. There are no private rooms, no closed doors. Life is lived collectively, the family bound as tightly as the fibers of the hammock itself. The furnishings are few, but each object matters. A wooden stool, worn smooth by years of use. Small tools of bone or stone, laid carefully aside. Perhaps a figurine, carved of clay or jade, sitting on a small shelf near the hearth. This is not merely decoration, it is an offering, a silent reminder of ancestors and gods. Life in the Maya world is never separated from the sacred. Every corner of the home is touched by ritual, by meaning. Children grow up in this space, their games filling the dim room with laughter. A boy might play with a small ball of rubber, practicing the moves he has seen in the great ball courts of the city. A girl may mimic her mother's grinding of maize, pressing her tiny hands against a small stone, her gestures clumsy but full of determination. These games are not only play, they are preparation. From the earliest years, children learn by watching, by repeating, by inhabiting the rhythms of daily life. Outside, the day continues. Neighbors call to one another, voices carrying easily across the open courtyards. Smoke rises slowly from many hearths, drifting upward into the humid air. Chickens cluck in the dust, and dogs, small and lean, trot between the houses, always searching for scraps. The home is not an isolated place. It is part of a community, bound by shared labor, shared rituals, and the endless cycle of planting and harvest. Evenings are perhaps the most peaceful. As the sun lowers and shadows stretch long, families gather together inside. A simple meal is prepared: tortillas made from maize, beans stewed slowly, perhaps a bit of squash or chili if it is available. The food is plain, yet filling. Hands move quietly, passing bowls, tearing tortillas, dipping them into the beans. Conversation is unhurried, the tone soft. Outside, the jungle grows louder as night creatures stir, their cries forming a constant background. After the meal, the family rests. The hammocks sway gently as each person settles into place. The crackle of the fire grows softer. Smoke curls upward, disappearing into the thatch. The night air presses in, warm and close, carrying with it the sense of earth and rain. Slowly, one by one, the voices fade, leaving only the sound of breathing, of insects singing outside, of the distant rumble of thunder in the mountains. In such a home, there is little luxury, no glass, no metal, no softness beyond the embrace of fabric and family. Yet within these walls is safety, familiarity, and belonging. The Maya home is not a place of grandeur, but of constancy. It holds generations within its earthen walls, bearing witness to the cycles of life and death, planting and harvest, prayer and silence. To live in a Maya home was to live simply, closely, and together woven into the rhythm of land, family, and gods. Imagine walking out of the narrow streets of the Maya city, leaving behind the clusters of homes and stepping into the fields, the lifeblood of the people. The air here is different. It is open, wide, and filled with the heat of the rising sun. The land stretches outward, dotted with maize plants, their stalks tall and swaying slightly in the humid breeze. For the Maya, food was more than sustenance. It was identity. Maize was not only a crop, but a sacred gift. In Maya creation stories, humanity itself was shaped from maize dough, molded by the gods into living flesh. Every grain, every tortilla, every kernel was both food and symbol. To eat maize was to reaffirm your place in the cosmos, to acknowledge the bond between earth, gods, and people. Daily life in the fields began early. Families walked together, carrying stone tools, baskets, and gourds filled with water. The soil was turned with wooden digging sticks, the ground softened by careful, repeated labor. Men bent low, planting seeds, while women and children tended the smaller tasks, pulling weeds or carrying harvested crops. Sweat quickly gathered, soaking cloth and dripping into the soil. Yet the work was steady, rhythmic, a part of existence as natural as breathing. The fields were often built in cycles known as the milpa system. Land would be cleared, sometimes by burning, sometimes by cutting back the jungle end planted with maize, beans, and squash, known together as the Three Sisters. These plants supported one another, maize growing tall, beans climbing the stalks, and squash spreading across the ground, keeping the soil moist. After a few years, the land was left to rest, to regain its strength, and the people moved on to another plot. It was a cycle of renewal, patient and enduring. Food was simple but nourishing. Tortillas of maize, soft and warm, formed the base of every meal. Beans added strength, squash provided variety, and chilies gave flavor. When possible, avocados, tomatoes, and cacao enriched the diet, though cacao was often reserved for rituals or the elite. The drink of cacao, mixed with water and sometimes flavored with honey or chili, was considered both refreshing and sacred, though for most commoners it was a rare indulgence. Protein came sparingly. Turkeys, ducks, and small dogs were sometimes kept for food. Hunting added deer, rabbits, or wild birds to the diet, though these were never guaranteed. Fish, caught from rivers or along the coasts, provided variety where geography allowed. Still, for most Maya people, the diet was overwhelmingly plant-based, anchored by maize. Farming was not only practical, but spiritual. Every planting was accompanied by rituals. Offerings were made to the gods, small pieces of food, drops of blood, or burned incense to ensure the harvest would be generous. If the rains came late, prayers grew more urgent. The gods of rain, like Chak, were called upon with chants, dances, and offerings. A failed harvest meant hunger, and hunger could spread quickly through the community. The work was unending. After planting came tending, after tending came harvesting, and after harvesting came preparing for the next cycle. There were no machines, no shortcuts, only human hands and the patience of repetition. A single day might involve hours under the sun, pulling weeds, carrying water, or grinding maize. Your muscles ached, your skin burned, yet the work continued, day after day, season after season. And yet, there was beauty here too. The fields glowed golden in the sunlight, the maize rising tall as though reaching for the heavens. Children played between the rows, their laughter mingling with the sound of wind through the stalks. Families gathered in the evenings to share the food they had grown with their own hands. There was pride in survival, in the knowledge that the gods had granted another day, another meal, another chance to endure. The connection between food and culture was inseparable. To be Maya was to eat maize, to farm maize, to honor maize. Without it, life was unimaginable. With it, life was sustained, body and spirit alike. So, as you picture the vast green fields stretching beneath the heavy sun, imagine yourself among the workers' feet, pressing into the soil, hands darkened by earth, sweat running down your back. The rhythm of your life is measured not by clocks or calendars, but by the planting of seeds and the turning of seasons. This was the essence of Maya farming, steady, sacred, and eternal. Imagine, for a moment, being born into a Maya family. Your first cries rise into the warm, humid air of the lowlands, carried on the smoke of the hearth fire. Your mother cradles you in woven cloth, while your father whispers prayers to the household gods. Life begins not with silence, but with ritual, for every stage of existence in the Maya world is tied to ceremony. From the very beginning, your path is shaped by tradition. Infants were often given names tied to the day of their birth, according to the sacred calendar. That calendar, with its intricate cycles of numbers and symbols, was believed to influence your destiny. To be born under one sign might mark you as fortunate, while another might signal hardship. Your family listened carefully to the priests who spoke of the day's meaning, and they accepted it as a map of your life to come. As a child, your education does not begin in schools with books or scrolls, but within the walls of your home and the fields beyond. You learn by watching, by listening, by repeating the motions of your parents and siblings until they become second nature. A boy might follow his father to the fields, carrying a small digging stick, learning how to turn the soil. A girl might kneel beside her mother, mimicking the grinding of maize on a matete, her tiny hands clumsy but eager. The home itself is your first classroom. You learn to sweep the packed earth floors with bundles of reeds, to keep the hearth fire alive with careful blows of breath, to carry water in clay jars without spilling. These lessons are not written, but embodied, passed from one generation to the next through endless repetition. Games are part of learning, too. Children play with small clay figurines, simple toys that mirror the lives of adults. Balls made of rubber are tossed and chased, echoing the great ball game played in the plazas of the city. Through laughter and play, you come to understand balance, coordination, and the rhythms of society. But Maya childhood is not carefree in the way we imagine today. Discipline is firm. Respect for elders is expected. You are taught to honor the gods, to attend ceremonies, to understand that your place in the world is woven into a web of duty. Every offering, every ritual you observe reinforces the idea that life is fragile, dependent on divine favor, and that humans must play their part to keep the balance of the cosmos. Education also depended on your family's station. For most, the lessons remained practical: how to farm, how to cook, how to build, how to survive. But for the children of the elite, education extended further. Noble boys were taught by priests, learning to read and write the intricate hieroglyphs that covered temple walls. They memorized long histories, complex rituals, and the calculations of astronomy. Noble girls were trained in weaving, in music, in the refinement of social ceremony. Their duties were different, but no less binding. Imagine being such a child, seated cross-legged before a priest. His voice is calm, steady, as he traces glyphs into the dirt with a stick. Each sign is a story, a memory of kings, of battles, of gods. You repeat the shapes, trying to capture their curves and lines, your hand unsteady, your mind struggling to hold the vast web of meaning. It is not easy, but it is expected. These lessons may last for hours, broken only by the slow passage of the sun across the sky. At night, whether noble or commoner, you return to the family hearth. You fall asleep in a hammock, swaying gently, the sounds of insects humming beyond the walls. Perhaps you dream of games, of harvests, of ceremonies yet to come. Childhood is short here. By the time you reach early adolescence, you are expected to take on the full duties of an adult. Girls may marry in their early teens. Boys may begin full labor in the fields or workshops. There is little time for lingering innocence. Life presses forward, steady and relentless. Yet, even in this rhythm, there is warmth, the embrace of family, the laughter of play, the comfort of knowing your place in the community. Childhood in the Maya world is both strict and gentle, shaped by the balance of survival and tradition. So, as you imagine the life of a Maya child, learning through repetition, growing through ritual, finding joy in the smallest of toys and games, remember that their world was one of closeness, of family, of community, of duty, and of an ever-present awareness that their lives were threads woven into the fabric of the gods' creation. In the Maya world, nothing was separate from the sacred. Every act, planting a seed, cooking a meal, building a home, was tied to the will of the gods. Religion was not reserved for temples or special days. It lived in every breath, every offering, every word of prayer whispered in the smoke of burning incense. Imagine yourself walking toward the center of a Maya city. The streets narrow and then widen suddenly into a plaza dominated by towering pyramids. Their steps rise steeply, stretching toward the sky, their stones glowing faintly in the warm sunlight. At the top stand temples where priests move with deliberate slowness, carrying out rituals that bind the people to the gods. The air here is thick with the scent of copal resin. The smoke drifts upward in pale curls, carrying prayers into the heavens. The sound of drums echoes across the plaza, deep and steady, joined by the high calls of flutes made of bone. The music does not stir. Excitement is steady, solemn, repetitive, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. Every family, no matter how humble, took part in religious practice. In homes, small altars were built in corners, decorated with clay figurines, shells, or bits of jade. Offerings of food, water, and incense were placed daily. Simple gifts meant to honor the ancestors and the gods who watched over the household. But larger ceremonies drew entire communities together. These were not occasional events. They occurred frequently, tied to the cycles of the sun, the moon, and the sacred calendar. Each ceremony was a reminder that human beings were deeply dependent on forces beyond themselves, that survival required constant negotiation with the divine. The rituals could be intense. Priests and nobles practiced bloodletting, piercing their skin with sharp bone or obsidian, allowing drops of blood to fall onto paper or into fire. This was not done with violence or spectacle, but with solemn reverence. Blood was seen as life itself, the most precious offering a person could give. By sacrificing a part of themselves, they sought to maintain balance, to please the gods, to ensure the rains would come and the maize would grow. Imagine standing in a plaza filled with people. The crowd is silent, watching as a priest raises his arms to the sky. He chants slowly, words drawn from centuries of memory, his voice echoing between stone walls. The people bow their heads, feeling both fear and comfort. Fear of what might happen if the gods turned away, and comfort in the belief that these rituals kept the world in balance. The gods themselves were many, each tied to a different force of nature. Chak, the god of rain, was called upon with special urgency during times of drought. Kinich Ahau, the sun god, was honored daily for his journey across the sky-sustained life. Ix Chel, goddess of fertility and medicine, was invoked by women during childbirth. Each god required offerings, attention, and respect. Forgetting one meant risking disaster. Sacred places were not only temples. Caves, rivers, and cenotes, deep natural wells, were also seen as portals to the underworld. Ceremonies often took place at these sites, where offerings were thrown into the dark water or left at cave entrances. Archaeologists today have found objects, jade beads, pottery, even human remains placed carefully in these places, gifts for gods who dwelled in the hidden depths. The rituals of the Maya could seem harsh to modern eyes. Captives from warfare were sometimes offered to the gods in ceremonies of sacrifice. Yet even these acts were carried out with solemnity, not cruelty. They were seen as necessary exchanges, ensuring that the sun would rise, that rain would fall, that life would continue. To the Maya, the world was fragile, balanced between chaos and order. Ritual was the thread that held it together. Religion was not only about fear, though, it also brought beauty and order. Ceremonies were filled with color priests wearing elaborate feathered headdresses, their cloaks bright with jade and shells. Dancers moved in slow patterns, imitating the cycles of planets, the flight of birds, the growth of plants. Music, smoke, and movement blended into an experience that reminded everyone of their place in the cosmos. At the close of a ritual, the people returned home, carrying with them the sense that the world was, for now, in balance. They would light small fires, place a final offering of food or incense, and then resume their daily lives. The boundary between the sacred and the ordinary was almost invisible. To live was to believe, to eat was to give thanks, to work was to honor the gods. In the Maya world, ritual and religion were not interruptions to life. They were life itself. In the heart of the Maya world stood the city of Palenque, nestled against the low hills of Chiapas, in what is now southern Mexico. Palenque rose like a jewel from the jungle. Its temples gleamed in the sunlight, its plazas echoed with ritual chants, and its rulers claimed descent from the gods themselves. Among them, one name still endures across the centuries: Kainich Janab Pakal, known simply as Pakal the Great. Imagine the year 615 CE in the city of Palenque. A boy of only 12 years old is crowned king. His mother, Lady Sakkuk, places the royal headdress upon his head. The crowd bows, the priests raise their arms to the sky, and the future of the city rests on the shoulders of a child. Pakal was not born into ease. His early reign was marked by threats from neighboring cities, the constant possibility of invasion, and the fragile balance of power that shaped Maya politics. Yet, as he grew, so too did his authority. Slowly, carefully, he transformed Palenque from a vulnerable kingdom into one of the most magnificent centers of Maya civilization. Under Pakal's rule, Palenque flourished. He commissioned temples and palaces, their walls carved with intricate glyphs that told stories of lineage, battles, and cosmic order. The palace of Palenque, with its distinctive tower, rose as a symbol of power and refinement. Stone walls echoed with the voices of scribes, artisans, and nobles, all serving the vision of their king. Pakal ruled for nearly 70 years, an extraordinary span in any age. Through droughts, conflicts, and challenges, he remained steady, guiding his city with both firmness and vision. His reign became synonymous with stability, and his name was etched into stone again and again, a reminder to future generations of his enduring presence. But it was in death that Pakal left his greatest mark. Deep within the temple of the inscriptions, hidden beneath massive stone slabs, lay his tomb. For centuries, it remained sealed, untouched, a mystery whispered about in the jungle. When it was finally discovered in the 20th century, archaeologists uncovered a chamber of breathtaking grandeur. Inside, Pakal's body rested in a massive stone sarcophagus, its lid carved with one of the most intricate reliefs in Maya art. The image has been interpreted in many ways. Some see it as Pakal descending into the underworld, others as ascending to the heavens, reborn like the maize god. Surrounding him were offerings of jade, shells, and precious ornaments, tokens meant to guide him on his journey beyond death. His face, though, was covered with a delicate mask of jade. Smooth green tiles, cut and shaped with exquisite precision, formed the features of a man who lived and ruled more than 1,000 years ago. Through this mask, Pakal achieved a kind of immortality. His gaze, though silent, still seems to meet ours across the centuries. To the Maya people of Palenque, Pakal was more than a ruler. He was a bridge between the human and the divine, a leader who embodied the order of the cosmos. His life was a story of endurance, of creation, of transformation. His death was not an end, but a passage into myth. As you picture his world, imagine walking through the humid jungle, hearing the cries of monkeys and birds, until you come upon the towering temple of the inscriptions. Its steps rise steeply, worn by time, its stones warmed by the sun. Deep within lies the chamber of Pakal, where silence reigns, broken only by the slow drip of water echoing in the darkness. There, in the quiet heart of the temple, the king still rests, his reign remembered not in noise, but in stone, in glyphs, and in the eternal rhythm of history. In the Maya world, time itself was sacred. The rising and setting of the sun, the cycles of the moon, the movement of planets and stars all were not simply natural events, but signs of order, patterns written by the gods to guide human life. For the Maya, to understand time was to understand the universe itself. Imagine standing in a Maya plaza at dawn. The air is cool, touched with mist rising from the jungle. The first rays of sunlight strike the stone temples, illuminating glyphs carved centuries earlier. Priests stand silently, watching, noting the exact angle of the light, marking how it falls upon the steps of a pyramid or the doorway of a shrine. Each alignment matters. Each ray of light confirms the accuracy of their calendars, their observations, their beliefs. The Maya calendar system was astonishingly complex. It was not a single calendar, but several, woven together like strands of a braid. The first was the Hab, a solar calendar of 365 days, divided into 18 months of 20 days each, plus 5 additional days considered unlucky or dangerous. This calendar reflected the agricultural year, the planting, the growing, the harvesting of maize. It tied human labor to the rhythm of the sun. The second was the Tezocan, a sacred cycle of 260 days. Its origins are still debated. Some believe it related to the human gestation period. Others to astronomical cycles, perhaps the movement of Venus. For the Maya, though, it was primarily a spiritual calendar, governing rituals, ceremonies, and the destinies of those born under its days. Each day carried a name, a number, and a significance. To be born on a certain day was to carry its destiny through life. Together, the Hab and the Tezocan formed the calendar round, a cycle of 52 years before the same combination of dates would repeat. 52 years was a lifetime for many Maya people. And so the calendar round carried a sense of completeness, of a cycle fully lived. Beyond this, the Maya developed the long count, a calendar designed to track vast stretches of time, reaching backward to creation and forward to far distant ages. It was with this system that the Maya carved dates into stone, marking the reigns of kings, the dedication of temples, the unfolding of history across centuries. Astronomy lay at the heart of this system. The Maya observed the sky with patience, generation after generation, noting the movements of planets with extraordinary precision. Venus was especially important. Its cycles tied to war, to ritual, to decisions of state. The moon guided ceremonies, its phases marking the rhythm of offerings. The sun, of course, was the great measure of life itself, honored daily in prayers and alignments. Picture yourself watching as the sun sets at the equinox. Its light falls perfectly across the steps of a pyramid, splitting shadow and brightness in exact balance. To the Maya, this was not coincidence. It was proof that their world was ordered, that the gods had written harmony into the universe, and that by observing, by recording, they too could participate in that order. Centuries later, misunderstandings would arise. In the modern world, many believed that the Maya predicted the end of the world in the year 2012, a misreading of the long count. But for the Maya, that date was not an ending. It was a turning, the completion of one great cycle and the beginning of another. Time did not stop. It flowed endlessly, like water through stone channels, like the path of the stars across the sky. The glyphs carved on temple walls still speak of this deep relationship with time. Each symbol is more than a number. It is a story, a reminder that the past and the present are intertwined, that the divine is inscribed into the fabric of days and nights. Imagine lying beneath the vast night sky of the Maya world. No modern lights obscure the stars. The Milky Way stretches across the heavens, a luminous band of countless points. The air is warm, the jungle alive with quiet sounds. Yet above, the sky is eternal. For the Maya, the Milky Way was not merely stars, but a sacred river, a path of souls, a reminder that the cosmos itself was alive. In this world, time was never ordinary. It was divine, infinite, and endlessly repeating. To live as a Maya was to live inside a great calendar, every action measured, every moment sacred, every heartbeat part of the rhythm of the universe. Life in the Maya world was never entirely peaceful. While farmers tended their fields and artisans shaped clay into vessels, beyond the city walls there were always threats, rival kingdoms, ambitious rulers, and the endless push for power and prestige. Warfare was not constant, yet it was recurring, woven into the political fabric of Maya civilization. Imagine standing on the edge of a Maya city-state. Before you lies not a single empire, but a landscape dotted with independent city-stickle, Calakmul, Palenque, with its own ruler, its own gods, its own ambitions. These cities formed alliances, but they also waged war, clashing again and again over land, trade routes, and honor. Battles in the Maya world were different from the vast armies of later empires. They were often smaller, more personal, centered around the capture of enemies rather than their destruction. Warriors carried spears, tipped with obsidian, bows strung tight, and wooden clubs edged with sharp stone. Their bodies were painted with bright pigments, red and black, and their headdresses bristled with feathers. Before battle, rituals were performed, chants to the gods, offerings of incense, perhaps even bloodletting to summon divine favor. The goal was not always conquest of territory. More often, it was the capture of rival nobles, warriors, or even common soldiers to be taken back as trophies. A captured enemy was a sign of prestige, proof that the gods favored one side over the other. These captives were paraded through city plazas, their presence a reminder to the people that their ruler had triumphed, that order was restored. The fate of captives varied. Some were absorbed into the community as laborers, their lives continuing under new masters. Others, particularly noble captives, were offered to the gods in solemn ceremonies of sacrifice. These events were not carried out with cruelty for cruelty's sake. They were seen as exchanges, gifts of life to maintain the balance of the cosmos, offerings to ensure the rains would fall and the maize would grow. To the Maya, death in such a context was both an ending and a transformation, a passage into the realm of the divine. Imagine the stillness of a plaza after a battle. The crowd gathers, silent, their faces serious, as priests prepare for ritual. The air is heavy with smoke from burning copalae. The drums sound slowly, a deep and steady rhythm, echoing the heartbeat of the community. Captives stand bound, their expressions unreadable. For the people watching, this moment is not about cruelty, but about necessity. They believe their lives, their harvests, their very survival depend upon the balance these ceremonies restore. For the warriors, battle itself was a path to honor. A man who captured an enemy returned with status, his deeds recorded in glyphs, his name remembered in song. To fight was to prove courage. To fall in battle was not shame, but a mark of participation in the eternal struggle between order and chaos. Yet war was costly. Families waited anxiously for the return of fathers and sons. Fields lay untended while men fought. Trade routes were disrupted, hunger spread, and fear lingered. Victories brought pride, but they also brought exhaustion. The jungle, silent and vast, bore witness to countless such struggles. Archaeologists have uncovered murals that depict these moments. Painted walls show warriors seizing captives, leaders towering above their foes, ritual scenes of presentation and offering. These images remind us that warfare was not an anomaly in Maya life, but a recurring theme, recorded and remembered, part of the story each city told about itself. To imagine this world is to picture a society where conflict and ceremony were inseparable, where battle was not merely about land or wealth, but about the will of the gods. Every victory reinforced the ruler's power. Every defeat threatened the city's survival. So, as you rest and listen, imagine yourself among the crowd. You hear the slow beat of drums. You see the flicker of firelight on temple walls. You feel the weight of expectation pressing down upon the plaza. For the Maya, warfare was not chaos, it was ritual, necessary, and deeply woven into the rhythm of their lives. While the lives of most Maya people were marked by labor in the fields and repetition of daily chores, the nobility lived in a world that seemed, at times, like another reality altogether. High above the common courtyards and simple homes, the palaces of the elite stood as testaments to power, wealth, and the constant reminder that some were born to rule while others were born to serve. Imagine yourself approaching one of these palaces. It is not like the sprawling stone castles of Europe, but rather a series of interconnected courtyards and chambers built of limestone, rising above the plaza. The walls are plastered smooth, once painted in bright colors: reds, yellows, blues, though many have faded under centuries of sun and rain. Carved glyphs mark the entrances, announcing the lineage and accomplishments of the ruler who resides within. Inside, the air is cooler, shaded by high walls and narrow passageways. The floors are paved with stone. Courtyards open to the sky, where sunlight falls gently upon carved columns and benches. Here, nobles walk in garments of cotton dyed with rich colors, adorned with beads of jade and shells. Their headdresses rise tall, decorated with brilliant feathers of the quetzal bird green, shimmering and impossibly rare. The lives of the nobility were filled with ceremony. A noble family was expected not only to rule, but to embody the balance of the cosmos. Every action, every word, every ritual they performed was part of a larger performance, one that showed the people that order was maintained, that the gods were honored, that the city remained strong. Meals in the palace were more elaborate than those of commoners, while maize, tortillas, and beans were still staples. Nobles enjoyed cacao drinks, sweetened with honey, spiced with chili, or frothed to a thick foam. They dined on turkey, deer, or fish brought from distant rivers. Fruits, carefully gathered from the jungle, added color and sweetness. The food itself was not only nourishment, but a symbol of abundance, a sign that the gods had blessed the ruling family. The nobility also engaged in ritual spectacles. Bloodletting, which in homes might be performed with a simple thorn, became in the palace a carefully choreographed act. Kings and queens pierced their tongues or ears with sharp obsidian, their blood dripping onto strips of bark paper, which were then burned, the smoke rising like a bridge between humans and the divine. The act was solemn, deliberate, and deeply tied to their role as intermediaries between the people and the gods. Life in the palace was not idle, though it seemed luxurious compared to that of commoners. Nobles managed alliances with neighboring cities, arranged marriages to strengthen ties, oversaw artisans who crafted fine pottery and jewelry, and directed scribes who recorded their deeds on stone stele. The palace was as much a political center as it was a home. Imagine walking through its corridors. You hear the echo of voices speaking softly, the scratching of reed pens on bark paper, the steady footsteps of attendants moving with purpose. The smell of incense lingers in the air, mixing with the faint scent of roasted cacao. Everywhere there is a sense of order, of refinement, of lives lived with ceremony at every turn. Children of noble families were raised differently, too. They learned to read the complex hieroglyphs, to memorize long lineages, to recite prayers with precision. They were dressed in fine garments, trained to move with grace, to speak with authority. Their futures were determined from birth. Some would become rulers, others priests, others bound through marriage to extend the family's power. Yet for all its wealth and beauty, life among the nobility was not free of burdens. Rulers carried the weight of their city on their shoulders. A failed harvest, a lost battle, a neglected ritual could be seen as signs that the gods had withdrawn their favor. With privilege came responsibility, and with responsibility came constant pressure. Still, compared to the harshness of common life, the palaces of the nobility were oases of comfort. Cool stone halls, fine cotton clothing, jewelry of jade, and meals flavored with honey and cacao all marked a world apart. So as you picture the life of a Maya noble, imagine yourself in the cool shade of a palace courtyard. The sound of water trickles from a carved stone basin. A servant passes by, carrying a tray of cacao in painted cups. The walls are alive with color, the air alive with ritual. And above it all, the ruler sits, wearing feathers that catch the sunlight, a living symbol of the divine order. This was the world of Maya nobility, elegant, ceremonial, and deeply bound to the gods, even as it stood in contrast to the toil and sweat of the fields below. Every civilization carries within it both growth and decline. For the Maya, centuries of achievement, towering temples, intricate calendars, flourishing cities eventually gave way to change, to hardship, and to transformation. This was not a single moment of sudden ruin, but a long, slow unraveling, felt differently in each corner of the Maya world. Imagine standing in the plaza of a once bustling city. The pyramids still rise proudly. The temples still gleam in the sunlight. But the sound of the crowd is gone. The marketplace, once filled with voices bartering over cacao, salt, and maize, has grown quiet. Weeds push through cracks in the stone. The jungle, patient and eternal, begins to creep back, wrapping vines around walls, covering courtyards with leaves. Historians and archaeologists continue to debate the reasons behind the Maya collapse. One explanation speaks of drought-long seasons without rain, when crops withered and rivers shrank. Imagine farmers staring at empty skies, their prayers to chalk unanswered, their maize fields drying in the relentless sun. Hunger spread quickly in such times, weakening communities, straining rulers. Another explanation lies in warfare. As cities grew, so did their rivalries. Battles over trade routes, farmland, and prestige grew more frequent. Captives were taken, resources drained, and families lived in constant anxiety. Victory brought little rest, for new enemies always rose. The endless cycle of war strained not only armies, but the very fabric of society. There were also the burdens of population. Cities grew crowded. Forests were cut for fuel, for building, for farming. The land itself began to tire, the soil less fertile after generations of planting. Imagine standing in a field that once flourished with maize, now thin and pale, unable to feed the people who depended on it. And yet, it is important to remember that the Maya did not vanish. The so-called collapse was not the end of a people, but the shifting of a way of life. Some great cities were abandoned Palenque left to the vines and silence of the jungle. But the Maya themselves endured. They moved to new centers, adapted their ways, and continued their traditions. Even today, millions of Maya descendants live in Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras. They still speak Maya languages, still practice rituals, still plant maize, beans, and squash as their ancestors did. The collapse of the classic Maya cities was not a disappearance, but a transformation, a passage into another chapter of history. The legacy of the Maya is vast. Their mathematics, their astronomy, their art, and their stories continue to inspire. Their glyphs, once silent, are being read again by scholars, bringing voices from 1,000 years ago back into the present. Their temples still rise from the jungle, visited by travelers who stand in awe before the stones. Picture yourself walking through such a sight today. The jungle hums around you, cicadas singing in endless chorus. Sunlight filters through leaves, falling in golden patches upon carved stone. You place your hand against a wall, feeling the warmth of the rock, the roughness of glyphs carved centuries before. You breathe in the air thick, fragrant, alive, and realize that though the people who built these temples have long since moved on, their presence lingers. The Maya story is not one of disappearance, but of resilience. Their cities may have fallen quiet, but their culture endures. Their memory is carved into stone, painted on pottery, whispered in the languages still spoken by their descendants. To think of their collapse is to think of cycles of growth and decline, of endings and beginnings, of time flowing endlessly, just as they believed. For the Maya, time was never final. It was eternal, spiraling forward, always repeating, always renewing. And now, as our journey through the Maya world draws to a close, allow yourself to reflect gently. We have walked through the daily life of farmers and families, stepped into the dim interiors of their homes, and felt the steady rhythm of grinding maize. We have imagined the laughter of children at play, the solemn rituals of priests, the ambitions of rulers like Pakal the Great. We have gazed at the stars through Maya eyes, seen warfare and captives, the elegance of nobles, and finally the long, slow turning of decline. The Maya remind us that every civilization is fragile, bound to the land, the climate, the choices of leaders, and the cycles of time. Yet they also remind us that culture endures, that languages, traditions, and memory outlast even the mightiest of stone temples. As you rest now, think of the jungle reclaiming the plazas, of vines softening sharp stone edges, of the quiet hum of cicadas filling the night. Imagine yourself drifting through the silent corridors of a Maya city, the air heavy and still, the stones warm beneath your hand. The voices of the past whisper faintly, but they ask for nothing more than remembrance. Breathe slowly. Let the images fade into the distance. The temples sink into shadow, the stars wheel slowly overhead, and the jungle hum becomes softer, like a lullaby. You are safe, here in the present, wrapped in comfort, with only the gentle echoes of history to keep you company. And now, allow your eyes to close, your body to grow heavy, your thoughts to drift. Time itself flows onward, as it always has, and as the Maya believed, it always will. Rest well.